Thank you so much for having me in this space. Just a bit about myself. I have experience in election observation, and lately in 2022, I was a campaign manager. I worked with Azimio, worked with in the side of Mount Kenya with Jubilee Party, and I did a lot of work in these elections, and I have a lot to talk about elections in Kenya because it's something I'm into, and I'm also into governance and public administration as a career. So I know you wanted me to talk about elections. I just go through it like real quick about what exactly happens in our Kenyan election. And I would say the only election that was a people's election in Kenya was 2002, the Kibaki Tosha election. That is the only time that Kenyans were able to get what they voted for. We moved to 2007, where we had the post-election violence, the Kibaki and Raila election.
Hey, real estate investors, big heads up. Don't tell anybody, but I'm going to show you how to get in the real estate game.
The Kibaki and Raila election. A lot of that election had local manipulation, local players, what people would call, it was a local elite that would manipulate a people's will. That was not a fair election in the country. Even the Electoral Commission then, that was Kivoito then, he died saying that we do not know who won the election. I am saddened because there's no one who has come out to even write a book about the 2007-2008 election, where many Kenyans lost their lives. That was another election that has never been audited. And until today, we do not have a Kenyan election that has been audited. Most of the Kenyan elections are swept under the rugs, and we are made to believe elections have gone in a particular way. And that led to a coalition government after the post-election violence. And of course, the Ruto and Uhuru going to Hague. In 2013, we had the Uhuru and Ruto ticket. Another election that has never been audited. When I say this, we cannot authentically say that this particular individual won an election in Kenya, because there is no election in Kenya from 2007 where we've had servers opened. I will pull this quickly to 2022, the last election. But just to mention on 2013 election, where we had Akombe resigning, we had them Sando Day, we had a lot of things that happened in that election. But Kenyans, we just want to move on quickly and settle down. But all in these elections, it's not a people's election. In 2013, coming down, our elections have been manipulated externally in a big way. Manipulated, it's a long process. It starts from the funding of IEBC. It starts from monitoring the country a couple of years before the election. Programs, they call them civic education, foreign funded, but these are small ways of programming Kenyan elections. And we pull it all the way to 2022, and people have been asking me, Mary, how do you know this? I have been in this field as an observer, and I've been studying a lot and following the money. Most of the money that comes to IEBC from the development partners, UNDP, it's money that is meant to sway the directions of these Kenyan elections. And even to be brief and to go to exactly in the 2022 elections, you saw the Azimio team went to Chatham House, but what the media tells us is, of course, the European Union, the Western world is taking care of their interests. But that's not what happens. That's where they're doing an interview of who is going to be the president of what country. And now speaking about Kenya. And they qualify these people on how easily they can manipulate them and buy them in their history. And unfortunately, the Azimio team has not been very lucky in being the anointed people. So these are the team which is easily manipulated, which can carry an agenda, the Western agenda in Kenya, was anointed for this election. So elections in Kenya start from the very end. They know who they want. They start working backwards. And the media plays a big role in this. Propaganda plays a big role in this because narratives are set and then we work backwards to the people. One of the elections, these 2022 elections, and I don't know if one day we will ever be able to audit a Kenyan election, because what we get as leadership in this country is not what Kenyans elected. And I will shock you by telling you, high-level campaign secretariats know where the government is headed to. You must have had, like I come from Mount Kenya. In Mount Kenya, we use Jubilee Party. And members of parliament that are vying, utasikia wakisema serikali inaenda pande gani. It's not everyone who has this information. And for you get the ticket of the side where the government is going. Usually it is not who is popular, it is who has been anointed to be the leader. That's why everyone was scampering for a UDA ticket. All the Jubilee people, they just jumped to this other side and got tickets, actually bought tickets. They just buy these tickets to secure getting another term in parliament. And what I would say, if you study the Cherera for what they were talking about, the results of 2022. But because the country is highly charged, people don't listen to the details. But for example, Kiambu County had an excess of 500,000 votes on one candidate. But people say, these things are very small, they're not going to sway an entire election. Let's not look at them. But those things could sway a whole election. No one has ever looked keenly or talked about Smartmatic and how Kenyan data is diverted and changed. Or a logarithm is set to change or sway the data. That is what happens on Kenyan election. This is not local. This is not something done locally. It is an international manipulation of a Kenyan election. Someone needs to write a document about how we've lost our sovereignty. That's why when our president was sworn into office, he has done everything that's a foreign policy. It's not a Kenyan policy. In the Kibaki administration, we had public participation about GMO. Documents sit in parliament. But what did Ruto do? Immediately he came in, he lifted the ban on GMO. No public participation, nothing discussed in parliament, and GMO was allowed in Kenya. Every single loan that is coming to Kenya right now through IMF and World Bank has a social economic agenda attached to it. We give you this loan, you pass this bill, you pass this bill. That's why right now the agriculture bill has been passed. That's why right now it's a criminal activity to carry out agricultural activities unless you have a diploma in agriculture. Otherwise, you face a jail term or a bail. If anyone is willing, lawyers listening to this, please audit every single bill that has been passed in the Kenyan parliament. It's a foreign agenda. It's not a Kenyan agenda. Social economic structures, like on the 24th of July, there's a case, there are Kenyan agriculturists who have come together who are suing because it's now criminal to share seeds in Kenya. These are legislations that have gone through the parliament. That's why I would say this is the worst government I've ever seen as a Kenyan, because no one cares about the bills they have passed in that parliament. Why is our president jumping as high as the foreign masters want him to jump? Because they played a big role in his presidency. He has no stance to fight for the Kenyan people. That's why he was the best candidate for them. And if anyone feels like my sentiments are not true, tell me one single thing he has done that is good for the Kenyan people. Even this finance bill is all a social economic structure attached to IMF funding. When you study all these things that have happened in this country, you realize the foreign hand in the Kenyan democracy, it is so huge. And I will shock you when I tell you, even on the opposition side, high level, they always know where the presidency is going. I will shock you to tell you, even Raila knew, let me do this thing to maintain my backyard, to maintain the control of half of the country. He has a big following. To control Azimio, to have a big number members of parliament in parliament. But he knew he's not going to ascend to presidency because he sort of lost the willingness to keep fighting, because it's a big monster to fight. When the election is done, he'll quickly be meeting the ambassadors. He'll quickly be meeting the EU commissioners, because the players that be have to manipulate both sides. That's why even now, his AU seat is really attached to these foreign bodies. They just want to balance an equilibrium in Kenya, because we are the products in the market. We are the slaves. They're squeezing every little life out of us as they manipulate a sitting government and manipulate an opposition. And as we sit here, discussions are underway of building a government of sort of national unity. I don't know if they're going to call it coalition. And they think that is going to quell the cry of Kenyans right now. They just want a working situation to continue pushing their social economic agendas, which are not Kenyan, which are not for the good of any Kenyan. And you will see they are going to have cabinet positions next week, and you will see what these people are doing. They are working together. If they were not working together, none of these players is coming out clearly and listening to what Kenyans are saying. Because what Kenyans are saying, this government is not fighting for us. Even on the smallest level, this government is not fighting for Kenyans. For the people that can study and do this, if you study the Venezuelan hand in the Kenyan government, it was huge. The foreigners played a big role in diverting the will of the people. And I will tell you again and again, what you see today is not what Kenyans voted. Thank you, Eric, for your time.
Oh. My Lord, I wonder. I wonder